Speak again the ancient oaths, life before death, strength before weakness, journey before destination. I'm Shawn.
I'm Mango.
And this is a podcast, and it's tentatively called right now, Speak the Words. I haven't made, any social media or anything for it, so it's not, officially called that until I do that. But I'm pretty sure it's called Speak the Words. This is a podcast where I am going to explain to Mango, attempt to explain to Mango, what the hell is going on in the Stormlight Archive series. And it's gonna be fun. I'm excited.
I'm nervous at best, but also excited.
Well, I am also nervous, so do not worry. I have lots of notes written down.
Oh, I'm not nervous about the podcast. I'm nervous about learning all this Brandon Sanderson universe stuff.
Oh, I'm nervous about how well I'm gonna do on actually describing what's going on in the book, but we'll see. I behind the scenes, I went through a whole test run. I sat my friend Devin down and I was like, you're going to listen to me talk for half an hour. And I went through it, but this show, we're going to do 40 minutes of me explaining what's going on, going through the books, focusing on getting through book one first. I like to set achievable goals. Mango, what is your exposure to the Stormlight Archives and its author, Brandon Sanderson?
Basically almost nothing, really. I haven't read more than 2 chapters of any of his books. I know about him. I know that a lot of his books are part of this big universe of multiple different types of stories. I don't know how to explain that. I know one thing about Stormlight Archives from his lectures, and it's that, well, it's called Stormlight Archives because there's a lot of storms on the planet, and to survive all the storms, the creatures kind of evolved to be really, really gigantic crustaceans. That's all I know. There's really, really big crabs. I know him better for his writing lectures, honestly. I don't know much about his actual story.
Yeah, so you've watched some of his writing lectures.
Yeah.
I am what you might call a member of the Brandon Sanderson cult. It might be a cult.
He's a Brand Sand stan.
Yes, a Brand Sand stan. I've read almost every single one of the books he's written at this point. I think there's a handful that I'm waiting on reading. I've read all the Stormlight Archive books. I've read everything that Mango was talking about. He has a shared fictional universe. I've read all of those. I've read his superhero books. I've read his other YA fiction. And I went through reading the books with a friend who had already read them, and that was a cool experience. And so I was like, okay, so it was cool reading the books with a friend, but what would it be like if I went through the story again with a friend, but they didn't read the book? They didn't get the clarity that I got by reading it. And Mango volunteered as tribute for this exercise in patience. And now we're gonna go through that. Before we actually start reading from the book, well, I'm not gonna straight up. I'll tell you how that's gonna work actually a little bit. I've taken notes on the first 5 chapters of the book so far. I am paraphrasing as best I can, and in some places I'm gonna pull directly from the book, but I'm trying to do that as little as possible.
Because that would take forever if you did that too long.
It would take forever. It's already going to take forever. I assume that as we go on, my notes are going to get better as I start to understand what it is I actually need. So I would say, my notes might start off very long-winded at first, or maybe I'll tell you, I really doubt that my notes aren't enough. I think they're probably on the long-winded side and could get cut down. but that's something that we're going to learn as we go through this.
You say that, but we're both Kingdom Hearts fans, and you can't necessarily cut out a lot of the plot stuff.
Oh yeah.
To tell about Kingdom Hearts. So
that is very true, and this
we'll figure it out.
Is very complex. We'll figure it out. It's a process. So before we actually get into this first book, I do want to talk about a little bit what is the Stormlight Archive, because I really love these books, and I want to nerd out just a little bit before we actually get into this. So I'm going to nerd out now at the beginning of episode 1, and then I'm going to refrain myself from nerding out about this stuff as we go through, because something that I adore about these books that I just want to get out there is the structure. Like, I think just on a technical level, these books are incredible. But anyways, Stormlight Archive, written by Brandon Sanderson. It's part of the Cosmere, which is what you were referencing earlier when you said that a lot of his books take place in the same universe. Mm-hmm. It is a shared universe where most of his fantasy takes place in the Cosmere. Mm-hmm. That's all I'm going to say about that until later. I'm glad that you know that, because that was something that I was going to talk about later on. Not this episode, but I was going to wait a couple episodes to talk about that. So Stormlight Archive, it's going to be 10 books. Each book, he writes them, and I just think this is really cool, that he writes them as like 3 books. Like, they're really long. Like, his process includes, he plans them out as if they were a trilogy, which I think is neat. And on the structure end, while I continue to nerd out, each book follows a certain structure, and that is, each of the books is split into 5 parts with interlude chapters between each part. Each novel has one character who gets multiple interludes, so effectively they're given a novella inside the novel. Each book has a dedicated character that we see flashbacks for, exploring their backstory. And each book starts with a different character's perspective of the same night and ends with the same character's viewpoint. So every book's prologue is the same night played out from a different point of view, and every book's epilogue is from one specific character's point of view. And these are rules that every single book, so far, there's been 4 books out of a plan to 10, but all of those follow those rules, and I just think that's neat.
I'm a Kingdom Hearts fan, and I'm already confused from all this.
You're already confused from all this. It'll make sense.
Will it?
No. His goal is to attempt and have a novella set between each of the books. Because so far he has 2 novellas that are set between books 2 and 3 and 3 and 4 that we'll cover if we end up doing more of the series. And his plan is to go back and write one between 1 and 2, but he pretty much wants to have big book, novella, big book, novella, big book, novella. So this is going to be a long ass series. Other little cool notes I want to bring up really quickly is that each book on the back cover, there is text that is written in universe. What is written on the back cover of each book exists in the universe and is being written by somebody.
So there's no, like, reviews on the back of the book?
There are, but it starts with and when we actually start this book, I'm going to read what's on the back, but there's a thing that's on the back that is written by a character in the story.
Okay. I was just making a joke about how instead of story summaries on the back of books now, it's reviews. But
each book has several pieces of in-world art on the end pages and between some chapters that I'm going to send to Mango as we're going through it, and she's going to explain to us what it looks like, what she's looking at. And also, every chapter that is not a flashback, every chapter starts with an epigraph from an in-world document, a little excerpt of text from an in-world document.
Okay.
And so far, each book has been named after an in-universe book.
Okay.
Yes. So the names of the books There's also a book in the story that is titled the name of the actual book. Last couple fun facts, and then I promise we'll get into this. Blow your mind, or not blow your mind, but to make people feel very anxious about reading this series. Current word count is around 1,792,008 words.
In the book or the series?
In the full series, in all 4 books and the 2 novellas that are out.
Oh, I thought he said that each book was like 1,000,000 words. But...
Oh no, each book is about 500,000.
Okay.
Which is still a lot.
That is a lot.
It's still a lot of words. Also, I didn't find this all this information is collected nicely on the Coppermind, which is like a Brandon Sanderson wiki, and the fact that there's a lot of statistics on that wiki that like I don't understand why anybody would go through the time to find that stuff out, but I'm thankful that they did.
Mm-hmm.
Total in all 4 books as of right now, there's 4,820 pages. There's 476 chapters, and there are 54 different point of view characters. And those are all my fun facts.
I don't know how I feel about that last one.
About 54 POV characters?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of those are interlude POVs.
Oh, okay.
That like happen once and they don't come back.
Oh yeah, I kind of saw that already, like when I was reading Mistborn.
Yes. Mistborn's prologue starts with a
2
character that doesn't come back. 2, yeah.
Well, I don't know if they don't come back, but it has 2 point of views that are not like the main character. Anyway, moving on.
All right, now it's time to actually start.
Cool.
Are you ready?
No.
Are you ready? Are you ready? By the end of this, Mango, you will be ready to speak the words. Not by the end of this episode, by the end of like this whole thing.
I don't know if I could really speak the words until I actually read the books myself, but
well, you'll be able to figure it out once you know the words. But you got to figure out the words first. Anyways, I am going to start the timer in 3, 2, 1. All right. The Way of Kings, Book 1 of the Stormlight Archive. Right off the bat, Mango, I'm sending you the cover of the book right now. So go ahead and just describe to us what you see on the cover of the book.
I see a guy in armor wearing a cape that looks like it has one of the weird, creepy crustacean things on it.
Mm-hmm.
With a sword and a flagpole. And then on a distant cliff, there's another dude with a spear. And they're like standing on cliffs, and there's like big clouds and a sunset.
On the back cover of this book, it reads, this is what it reads. All right. It reads, I long for the days before the last desolation, the age before the heralds abandoned us and the knights radiant turned against us. A time when there was still magic in the world and honor in the hearts of men. The world became ours and we lost it. Nothing, it appears, is more challenging to the souls of men than victory itself. Or was that victory an illusion all along? Did our enemies realize that the harder they fought, the stronger we resisted? Perhaps they saw that the heat and the hammer only make for a better grade of sword. But ignore the steel long enough and it will eventually rust away. There are 4 whom we watch. The first is the surgeon, forced to put aside healing to become a soldier in the most brutal war of our time. The second is the assassin, a murderer who weeps as he kills. The third is the liar, a young woman who wears a scholar's mantle over the heart of a thief. The last is the High Prince, a warlord whose eyes have opened to the past as his thirst for battle wanes. The world can change. Surge binding and shard wielding can return. The magics of ancient days can become ours again. These 4 people are key. One of them may redeem us, and one of them will destroy us.
Huh.
And that is what is written on the back of the book.
When you said the word desolation, I was really tempted to make a joke about Desolation of Smog.
Well, you know what? Stay tuned. No, I'm kidding. There is no smog. That's a joke. Smog is not going to appear in this book, I promise. At the front of the book, on the end pages, there's some art that I'm going to send you. Here's one. If you just want to describe what that is, what you're looking at.
I'm looking at something that looks like the leveling system in Final Fantasy X.
It looks like a sphere grid. It does, doesn't it? Yeah, that's...
So, each of the spheres look like they have a different insignia that looks vaguely like a bird. All of them look vaguely like birds or dragons or something. And like behind behind the grid, it has like crab dragons.
Okay, yeah. It kind of yeah. And then on the other one is this image.
It's a map.
It is a map. What's it a map of?
Roshar. It looks very swirly. Like the islands kind of swirl around the mainland.
Yeah. It's very I like the design of Roshar. This is a map of Roshar, and it's a map of Roshar during the Silver Kingdom's epoch, whatever that means. And I've got more images for you because there's a lot at the front of the book. This is a nice little drawing that is fun, and you'll enjoy it.
That's okay.
What
so
is
this
it?
story has demogorgons, okay.
What do you see?
It's like a bunch of guys wearing cloaks standing looking out of like an open window. And like they all have like weird tentacle spiky things coming out of their faces. It looks like it might be masks, but also not entirely masks. I don't know. It's just creepy.
Pretty weird, huh?
It's kind of creepy.
Kind of creepy. And then I got one more map for you that's at the front of the book. This is another map of Roshar.
A more detailed map of Roshar.
Well, also, if you look at it, it is different.
The areas are different. There's a lot more of them.
Different names. And smaller.
So either this one is older and they got taken over by some ruler into like bigger regions or states or whatever, or this one's the newer one and they all broke up into like their own little areas. I don't know which one is true, but they're different.
We will find out. All right. Now, the actual first chapter of the book, the prelude to the Stormlight Archive. Not the prologue to this book, the prelude to all 10 books. This book starts with a prelude to the entire series. And every chapter of this book has a little symbol with it. So this is a symbol for that is on the prelude. And I won't have to send the symbol for every chapter. Eventually they'll start to repeat, but that is the one for the prelude.
I just went back and looked at the web and it's not on there, so that's interesting.
Yes, it is a different one. It is interesting. All right. The prelude starts. We're introduced to a man named Kalik. He's wandering through a torn landscape and he sees the corpse of a dying Thunderclast, which is essentially just a giant stone man.
Okay.
The beast's hand is as big as a man, and Kalik mentions that he'd been killed by Thunderclast before and it hadn't been pleasant. He continues through the battlefield. Yes? Yes?
Never mind. Keep going.
No, what's up?
No, you just said he'd been killed before, and I was like, wait a second. Oh,
yeah,
so this is that kind of story. Okay,
Kalik
keep going.
has been killed before. He continues through the battlefield, and he describes the plain as being full of rock and stone, with natural pillars rising around them and bodies littering the ground. The stone ridges were shattered where Surge Binders had fought and where Thunderclass had ripped themselves free of the stone. There were both human and non-human corpses, red, orange, and violet bloods mixing. Smoke rose from burning corpses and sections of smoldering rocks, and while looking at the smoke, Calic thinks that the Dustbringers did a good job. And then he reflects on the fact that he survived this time. He's making his way to a meeting spot, thinking about his survival and thinking about how it's dangerous to have survived. When he died, he was sent back with no choice. When he survived the desolation, he had to return of his own choice, back to a place of fire and pain, and he is considering not returning. He arrives at the meeting spot that the 10 of them had chosen before the battle. The survivors were supposed to meet there, and he finds only Jezrien waiting for him. Calic wonders if the other 8 had all died, but noticed that 7 swords stood at the base of a spire driven point first into the stone ground, and each was a masterly work of art flowing in design inscribed with glyphs and patterns. If the wielders had died, the blades would have gone with them. He says that the blades are weapons of power beyond even shard blades, and he approaches Jezrien, describing him as a man barely into his 30th year despite having lived for centuries. Calic asks Jezrien where the others are, and Jezrien tells him that they've departed with only one of them dying this time. Calic describes Jezrien as being calm, deep, and regal, although he hadn't worn a crown in centuries. Jezrien says that Talinel died holding a passage on his own, and that Taln had a tendency to choose hopeless fights and die winning them. He'd returned to the place where they went between desolations. Calic whispers that he can't return this time. He couldn't tell if it'd been centuries or millennia of torture. He describes fires and hooks digging into his flesh every day, searing the skin off his arms, burning the fat, and driving to the bone. Jezrien tells him to leave his sword. He says that he had been chosen to wait for Calic, that a decision had been made to end the Oath Pact. Ishar believes that so long as there is one of them bound to the Oath Pact, it would be enough. There is a chance that they could end the cycle of desolations. Calic sees anguish and grief in Jezrien's eyes, and he thinks maybe cowardice. He sees a man hanging from a cliff by a thread, and he realizes that Jezrien is broken too. They all are. The battlefield is covered with corpses of men in primitive wraps carrying spears topped with bronze heads, and between them were other corpses in gleaming plate armor. And he points out the vast difference between the two. Calic tells Jezrien that the people rely on them, that they're all that man has. Jezrien says they have the Radiance, and that will be enough. Calic thinks that the enemy will find a way around this, and Jezrien agrees that he might, and does not elaborate any more on it. He's just kind of like, yeah, it might not work. That's it. And Taln, Calic asked, better that one man should suffer than 10, Jezrien whispered. He seemed so cold, like a shadow caused by heat and light falling on someone honorable and true, casting this black imitation behind. Jezrien summons his own sword, appearing from mist, wet with condensation, and says that it has been decided. They will go their ways and not seek out each other. Their blades will be left and the Oath Pact ends. Then he slams his sword into the stone with the other 7. He bows his head, looking ashamed, and said that they had chosen this burden willingly. They can choose to drop it if they wish. What do we tell the people, Jezrien? Calic asked. What will they say of this day? It's simple, Jezrien said, walking away. We tell them that they finally won. It's an easy enough lie. Who knows? Maybe it will turn out to be true. And with that, Jezrien walks away. Calic summons his blade and slams it into the stone besides the other 8. He turns and walks in the direction opposite from Jezrien, and yet he could not help glancing back at the Ring of Swords and the single open spot. The place where the 10th sword should have gone, the one of them who was lost, the one they had abandoned. Forgive us, Calic thought, then left. And that is the prelude to the Stormlight Archive.
So the guy who just died, like, in battle is the one that they're, like, leaving behind. It's like, hey, you
Yeah.
died. Get fucked.
Yeah. You
Too bad.
You survived. Have fun being tortured on your own.
That sucks.
He died. So, poor Tom.
Why do I get the feeling he's gonna be a bad guy?
That, hey, you know what? Maybe. And then the book says, Book 1, The Way of Kings, 4,500 years later.
Oh. We're pulling a near time skip up in this bitch.
4,500 years later. And there's another image. It's another map.
Oh, great.
There's another map.
The first thing I see is just... I didn't see the L at the end, but I saw Thanaida. I was like, no, it's Thanadia.
Thanadia.
Anyway, it's Alethkar.
Yes.
And a bunch of different regions in Alethkar.
So if you take this map, you can now figure out which one of the other two that you've seen is the modern one.
Ah, okay. So they broke up into a bunch of smaller areas.
Yes, there's a lot smaller areas now. And yeah, this is a map of I think it's pronounced Alethkar. But Alethkar, I'm not sure, to be honest. Alethkar also sounds right. So
Only Brandon knows.
only Brandon knows. There's weird pronunciation in this, and I'm gonna read some names to you at points during these books, and I'm gonna ask you to spell them just because I think that's funny, and it'll be funny to watch you not be able to spell them because the pronunciations are bullshit. Anyways, prologue to Kill, and we have another image for you. Just this is the prologue image.
It's Aang, but with a sword.
It's Aang. It is a bald man. It must be Aang. You're right.
No,
It's
wait, no, you're right. It's One Punch guy.
It's Saitama from One Punch Man. Very true. Thank you.
Except clearly he's not One Punch Man because he needs a sword.
Yeah, he needs a sword. Isn't that interesting? The epigraph for the prologue reads, "The love of men is a frigid thing, a mountain stream only 3 steps from the ice. We are his, O Stormfather, we are his. It is but 1,000 days and the Everstorm comes. Collected on the first day of the week Pala of the month Shash of the year 1171, 31 seconds before death. Subject was a dark-eyed pregnant woman of middle years. The child did not survive."
Sad.
Sad. The prologue starts with the sentence, "Zeth Sun Villano, truthless of Shinovar, wore white on the day he was to kill a king."
That's quite the sentence.
It is quite a sentence, isn't it, to start you off with. He goes on to explain that the white clothing is a Parshendi tradition that his masters had required, and he didn't ask any questions. He's sitting in a large stone room. Around him, people are dancing, drinking, singing, clapping, and passing out drunk. Zeth sat in the back, and he's a Shin servant at a treaty signing. He says most here in the East thought Zeth's kind were docile and harmless, and they were generally right. His masters are the Parshendi, who are dismissed as savages by the rest of the civilized kingdoms. They are men with black skin marbled with red. They're named the Parshendi as they are cousins to the servant people known as Parshmen, and the name roughly translates to Parshmen who can think. So, already, not a great society in how they view other people.
Yeah. Bransan really likes doing stuff like that. Like, Mistborn starts out on a slavery plantation, and here we've already got racism.
Already racism, and oh boy, is there racism. Fantasy racism. Why? As some people would say.
Because it's less personal, so people are able to see the other side more easily.
Yes, I will say I do think that Sanderson, in his books, while he does tackle racism and just like different, like discrimination against other people, that are different than you quite a bit in his books. I think he does it well almost every time. Anyways, drummers in the room began to play a new song, and Zeth stood and made his way through the room. He noticed the king had left hours ago, and he steps around... you ready for a lot of names? He steps around Dalinar Kholin, the king's brother, who was slumped drunk at a table and was refusing to go to bed. He notes the absence of Yasna, the king's daughter, and he sees Elokar, the king's son, sitting at the high table in his father's place. Elokar was talking to a dark-skinned Azish man who had an odd patch of pale skin on his cheek and a thinner Alethi-looking man. Zeth skirts around the side of the room and notes that music spren are zipping through the air, the tiny spirits taking the form of spinning translucent ribbons.
I was just gonna say that guy, the first name, the one who refuses to go to bed, that's you.
Dalinar? That's me? Yes, that is me. Refusing to go to bed. I'm not drunk when I do it, but I do refuse to go to bed.
Usually.
But yeah, I'm gonna call attention to the sentence one more time. Or what I wrote one more time. Zeth skirts around the side of the room and notes that music spren are zipping through the air, the tiny spirits taking the form of spinning translucent ribbons. So just keep that. It's explained that the Parshendi don't seem angry, yet they still hired Zeth to break the treaty, and Zeth won't question his orders. So he's at some treaty signing, and the Parshendi were like, hey, we're breaking this treaty that we're signing. Go kill the king. He passes lights that hold sapphires infused with stormlight. Roll credits. He thinks it's...
No, but we haven't heard the word archives yet, so you can't do that.
That's true. We have not heard the word archive yet. Zeth thinks it's profane, and Zeth loves the word profane, telling you now. He thinks it's profane to use something so sacred as a light. He worries that Alethi scholars are close to making new shard blades, and if they do, the entire world would end up speaking Alethi. The Alethi are described as having a natural nobility to them. The men looked like generals, while the women wore silk dresses with bright colors. They also covered their left hands. They wore gems
this is another thing I heard about.
Yes, the women in the culture cover their left hands.
The safe hand glove.
The safe hand, and we will talk more about that later. They wore gems in their hair that glowed with stormlight. Zeth leaves the feasting chamber and enters the Beggar's Fest, where some of the poorest men and women in the city were given a feast complimenting that of the king and his guests. It's an Alethi tradition, he says. So he's worried about the Alethi invading the rest of the world and taking it all over, but at the same time, at feast they're pretty nice. They feed the poor people. That's pretty cool, right? You're not sold?
No.
Zeth passes a drunk man who says, "Have you seen me?" And forget about that guy. Because then he continues past a line of statues depicting the 10 heralds from Vorin theology. He names a few of them: Jezreeza, Ishi, Helik, and Talanalet. Yeah?
Why does this sound familiar?
Interesting. Those are some interesting names, aren't they? Not quite exactly what we remember from earlier.
Well, yeah, but that's how society evolves. That if names are passed through oral tradition, they're gonna change.
Yes. And then here's another name. He notes that Shalash's statue is missing, which is strange as the king is very devout, sometimes too devout. And we have not gotten Shalash as a name yet. So just lots of names.
I wonder who that one could be.
I don't think they said her name in the prelude.
No, but I mean, like...
Oh, you just wonder who that could be?
No, it's like, in the prelude, one of them gets left behind. Oh, now, one of them doesn't have a statue.
I will say...
Is it a different one?
Was the one.
Oh.
Yeah, Taln was the one that got left behind.
Okay.
And there is somebody named Talanalet. So Shalash is a different one than the one that got left behind.
Interesting. That's weird.
Her statue's missing.
Why is her statue missing? I guess we'll find
Good
out.
question. You actually will find out. Stay tuned.
Unlike Kingdom Hearts.
Unlike Kingdom Hearts, Zeth mentions that the stone floors were profane, as stone is not to be trod upon. He has no choice, though, as he is truthless and must do as his masters demand. And he finally explains now that his masters had him wear white to give warning. It's a Parshendi tradition that if you were going to assassinate a man, he was entitled to see you coming. Zeth started heading toward the king's chamber. Torches burn on the walls with flame spren dancing around them, like large insects made solely of congealed light. Zeth sees some stormlight lamps and goes over to them. 2 guards approach him carrying spears, as they aren't light eyes, and were therefore banned from using a sword.
That's racist.
Yeah, so there's also eye color racism in Alethi culture.
I wonder where this.
Dark eyes.
I wonder where that idea comes from.
Yeah, I wonder. The 2 guards try to shoo Seth away, but he doesn't move. And then Zeth breathed in deeply, drawing forth the stormlight. It streamed into him, siphoned from the twin sapphire lamps on the walls, sucked in as if by his deep inhalation. The stormlight raged inside of him, and the hallway suddenly grew darker, falling into shade like a hilltop cut off from the sun by a transient cloud. Zeth could feel the light's warmth, its fury, like a tempest that had been injected directly into his veins. The power of it was invigorating but dangerous. It pushed him to act, to move, to strike. The stormlight that Zeth sucked in would leak out of his body, and if he breathed, it would leak faster. Apparently, Voidbringers could hold it in perfectly, but Zeth is unsure that they ever existed. His punishment declared they didn't. His honor demanded that they did. The guards ask Zeth what he is, and he says, "I'm sorry." Then, here we go. Ready to learn a magic system?
Oh, great. Let's go.
He lashes himself to a distant point down the hall, making it like that direction has become down. This is a basic lashing. He has 3 kinds of lashings which allow him to manipulate gravity.
Oh, interesting.
Zeth fell. Yeah, it's very interesting. I love the lashings. They're very cool.
Oh, wait a second.
What's up?
Oh, I thought this was like one of the things you told me about like forever ago.
I think I have mentioned the lashings before.
Yeah. It's like we made the jokes. You think the sky is your ally.
Yeah.
Anyway, keep going.
Zeth fell, feet first, into the 2 guards' faces as they were now standing on the wall. He quickly lashed himself back down to the floor, landing between the 2 guards, his clothes crackling and dropping flakes of frost. Then he began to summon his shard blade. One of the guards went for his spear, and Zeth grabbed the man's shoulder, lashing him to the ceiling. The guard crashed into the ceiling and dropped his spear. Killing was the greatest sin for Zeth. As truthless, there was only one life he was forbidden to take, and that was his own. At the 10th beat of his heart, his shard blade dropped into his waiting hand. It formed as if condensing from mist, water beating along the metal length. His shard blade was long and thin, edged on both sides, smaller than most. Zeth swept it out, carving a line in the stone floor and passing through the second guard's neck. Shard blades easily cut stone, steel, or anything inanimate, but the metal fuzzed when it touched living skin. It traveled through the guard's neck without leaving a mark, but once it did, the man's eyes smoked and burned. They blackened, shriveling up in his head, and he slumped forward dead. A shard blade did not cut living flesh, it severed the soul itself.
Huh. This reminds me of the Backbiter from Percy Jackson. Kind of mixed with like regular celestial bronze weapons, because the regular ones just pass through humans. It can't hurt them. But then Backbiter actually can like drain your soul out of your body or whatever.
Yeah. Man,
Anyway.
I gotta reread those books.
Keep
The
going.
man on the ceiling had gotten to his feet, now standing upside down. The guard called out for help. The use of Stormlight was unfamiliar to them, but they knew a shard blade. Zeth picked up the dropped spear and pointed it up towards the ceiling. The guard's lashing ran out, and he fell onto the spear, impaling him through the chest. Zeth continued on. He was to kill the king, but be seen doing it. More spheres hung from the walls of the hallway. The things Zeth could do with them hadn't been seen for millennia. Zeth lets the more guards see him, then takes off down the hallway, sucking in more Stormlight to move faster. He goes into a storage closet and uses a full lashing to bind the door to its frame. Full lashings bound objects together, but take longer and use more Stormlight than a basic lashing. Zeth walked to the wall opposite the door and cut a chunk out of it with his shard blade, another blasphemy. He lashed this chunk of rock towards the door, and it fell as the soldiers broke down the door and crushed them. He stepped through the new hole he'd created, entering a hallway. He sucked in Stormlight as he walked towards a door. Fearspren gathered near it. The door led to the last corridor leading to the king's chambers, filled with nervous soldiers. Spearmen charged. Zeth put his hand on the doorframe and used a reverse lashing. Zeth had to keep his hand there to use the lashing, but when the spearmen threw their spears at him, they were instead pulled towards the lashing. So we've seen his 3 types of lashing now. He's got a basic lashing, which allows him to change the center of gravity for anything that he's touching, or himself. He has a full lashing, which allows him to stick objects together. And he has a reverse lashing, which allows him to draw objects towards something that he has his hand on.
Or himself.
Or himself. He could also use it with himself. But that would be a little pointless. I want the spears to come towards me.
I mean, not in this situation, but...
Yeah, it would be pointless in this situation. But, like, if he was fighting with a group of people and he wanted to protect them, he could do that, yes. The spears veered around him into the doorframe, and Zeth lashed himself to the wall. He ran along the wall, slicing through a few guards before lashing himself back down to the floor. He landed in the middle of the guards and made 3 wide swings of his shard blade, cutting through the guards. Legends say that the shard blades were given to humans by God to fight horrors of rock and flame, the Voidbringers. When a shard blade passed through someone's spine, they died. If it cut through a limb, it killed that limb. So, like, if you get somebody's arm, their arm will die. It'll just flop down uselessly. But if you get them through the spine, their soul is gone. When you killed with a blade, there was no blood. The king's door burst open and a group of soldiers rushed out, ushering a man in regal robes, his head ducked. They opened a side door and rushed through. Another figure stepped out, a man in shard plate, the complement to a shard blade. He also held a shard blade, so he has both. He has both shard plate and shard blade. Zeth had to deal with the shard bearer before continuing after the king, and thought perhaps the shard bearer could kill him and end his miserable life. Zeth is a real positive dude.
Sounds like
his
it.
lashing... Yeah. His lashing doesn't work directly on someone in plate. Zeth could not seek death, but if it came, he would welcome it. The shardbearer struck, and Zeth lashed himself to the side of the hallway. The shardbearer attacked again, and Zeth dodged, lashing himself to the ceiling. Zeth rushed forward and attacked downward. The man ducked, letting Zeth's blade cleave empty air. The man swung upward, and Zeth leapt backwards. Zeth lashed himself back down to the floor, landing behind the shardbearer and hit him in the back with his blade. Plate can block a blade, though the blade did cause cracks to form in the plate that leaked Stormlight. Zeth and the shardbearer continued fighting, Zeth lashing himself from wall to floor to ceiling, but not being able to get close enough to the shardbearer. Finally, Zeth managed to damage the shardbearer's plate and use Stormlight to enhance a kick that sent the shardbearer backwards into the king's room. Zeth left the shardbearer following the king. He started running, trying to get to the king before the shardbearer followed, but the shardbearer didn't try to follow. Zeth stopped. The shardbearer had been skilled, and few could rival the skill of Gavilar Khalin. Zeth charged the shard-bearer again, realizing that it was probably the king pretending to be a bodyguard. The king was sluggish now, and Zeth attacked in a flurry of strikes. Zeth lashed the furniture in the king's room in the direction of the king, hitting him with them. Can you imagine somebody breaks into your room and starts throwing your furniture at you? That's really mean. Zeth continued.
I mean, you're gonna die anyways.
Yeah, he might as well. Zeth continued striking the king's plate and eventually shattered his helmet. So he hit the helmet in the same place enough times that it shattered. And the king just straight up punches Zeth in the face, and the blow is so strong that it would have killed an ordinary man.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like, forget swords, I'm just gonna punch you in the face.
You broke my mask. I'm mad.
I'm mad.
I'm mad. The two ended up on the king's balcony, and Zeth lashes the balcony downwards over and over again until the force of the enhanced gravity caused the balcony to give out and the balcony plummeted with both of them on it.
Huh.
As they're falling, Zeth lashes himself to the castle wall and lands on it and watches as the balcony and the king fell. Zeth walks down the side of the building, just casually. just walking down the side of the castle.
His stuff.
And he finds the king. The king was alive, but had a large length of wood stuck through his side where Zeth had cracked his plate earlier. I expected you to come, the king said between gasps. Zeth took off the king's breastplate and sucked in stormlight from the gems stored underneath. The king coughed. You can tell Thydakar that he's too late. I don't know who that is, Zeth said, standing and resummoning his shard blade. The king frowned. Then who? Ristaris? Sadius? I never thought. My masters are the Parshendi, Zeth said. 10 heartbeats passed and his blade dropped into his hand. The Parshendi? That makes no sense, Gavilar coughed and pulled out a small crystalline sphere. You must take this. They must not get it. Tell my brother. He must find the most important words a man can say. Gavilar fell still. Zeth took the sphere. Though it was completely dark, it seemed to glow somehow, with a light that was black. Nothing makes sense anymore, Zeth whispered, tucking the strange sphere away. It's all unraveling. I am sorry, King of the Alethi. I doubt that you care. Not anymore, at least. At least you won't have to watch the world end with the rest of us. Beside the king's body, his shard blade materialized from mist, clattering to the stones now that its master was dead. Shouts of alarm came from inside the palace. Zeth needed to go. But, tell my brother. To Zeth's people, a dying request was sacred. He took the king's hand, dipping it in the man's own blood, then used it to scrawl on the wood. Brother, you must find the most important words a man can say. With that, Zeth escaped into the night. He left the king's shard blade. The blade Zeth already carried was curse enough. And that is the prologue.
It's like, I gotta get out of here, but I also gotta honor the dying wish. Hey, let's just pull a chamber of secrets and write in blood on the wall.
Yeah. Yeah, in his own blood. He takes the man's hand and he writes in his own blood. Part 1. Above Silence. Kaladin and Shallan. Chapter 1. Stormblessed. The epigraph for Chapter 1 is, You've killed me, bastards, you've killed me. While the sun is still hot, I die. Collected on the 5th day of the week Chach of the month Betab of the year 1171, 10 seconds before death. Subject was a dark-eyed soldier, 31 years of age. Sample is considered questionable. 5 years later. I'm going to die, aren't I? Sen asked. Sen stood next to a weathered veteran with a full beard cut short. The edges were starting to give way to gray. Sen thinks over and over that he's going to die. Oh, Stormfather, I'm going to die. He's clutching a spear, his hands slick with sweat. The veteran asks him how old he is. Sen didn't remember his name. He was too freaked out by the other army forming lines across the rocky battlefield. Short spears in front, long spears and javelins next, archers at the side. Dark-eyed spearman wore leather vests and knee-length skirts with a simple steel cap and a matching breastplate. Many of the Light Eyes had full suits of armor. They rode horses, their honor guards clustered around them with armor that gleamed burgundy and deep forest green. Sen wondered if there were any shard bearers among them. His commander, Bright Lord Amaram, wasn't a shard bearer, and Sen wasn't certain if any of his men were. Sen worried if he'd have to fight one. Ordinary men didn't kill shard bearers. And Sen just continues to freak the fuck out. The veteran asks him how old he is, and Sen tells him that he's 15. The veteran then asks for his name, and Sen tells him, I'm Sen. The veteran tells Sen that his name is Dalit. Sen asks Dalit if he's going to die, and he stared out at the army. There were thousands of them. Dalit tells him, no, you're going to be just fine. Just keep your head on straight. Stay with the squad. Sen tells him that he's only had 3 months training and can barely hold his spear. Dalit cuts him off, puts his hand on Sen's shoulder, and tells him that he's going to be fine. Sen asks him how he can know, and Dalit tells him that he's in Kaladin's Stormblessed squad. I'm going to finish this note. Sen asks him how he can know, and Dalit tells him that he's in Kaladin's Stormblessed squad. The other soldiers nearby nodded in agreement. Behind the two, thousands of soldiers lined up. Sen was right at the front with Kaladin's squad of about 30 other men. Sen wondered why he'd been moved to a new squad at the last moment, thinking it had something to do with camp politics. And with that, we're out of time. So, we got through the prelude, the prologue, and we started chapter 1. What do you think so far?
I'm thinking, I don't know what's going on, but I'm looking forward to finding out what the hell is going on.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
We saw like an ancient moment of some oath. They call it the Oath Pact being broken. And we saw an assassin kill a king.
Isn't Oath Pact redundant?
You know, you'd think so, wouldn't you? And now, I'm going to do this right now. I forgot to send you the symbol for this chapter. So we're going to do that right now. This is the symbol for this chapter.
Oh. It's like a crescent moon with like a bunch of spears pointing upward. And then there's like a spear with flag on it. Is that a familiar symbol? Hold on.
On the flag? I'm actually curious.
I think it is.
It looks like one of them. No, it doesn't look like that. I didn't think it's specifically any of those symbols, but it's in the same style as those symbols.
Okay.
That's still something to... That is still something to keep in mind. And now we're leaving off on a battlefield where a battle is about to begin, and I'm going to really quickly go ahead and I'm going to cross out all the stuff that we got through. We got farther than I thought we would. When I ran through this with Devin, we only got halfway through the prologue. But I also added an extra 10 minutes to the timer this time. But we got into chapter 1, so I'm glad you're looking forward to finding out more.
Yeah. It's like it's too early to know what the hell is going on. But I mean, there are several things that I could already pick up on because of what I've heard. Like we discussed the lashing stuff. And I know about one of the really big moments that's gonna come up way later. Like way later.
Yeah.
If we ever get to that.
Do you have any theories yet after that after those, or is it not enough to go off of?
It's not really enough to go off of. I just know that obviously those statues are based off of the characters from the prelude. And
yes, it does seem that way.
Apparently one of them that is missing is different from the one that got fucked over.
Yeah. The statue that is missing is not the same person that was left behind.
Why is this giving me foreteller vibes?
I was thinking about that.
It's like Lushu's the one that got left behind. Ava's the one that should be there but is missing for some fucking reason.
Oh, I can't wait for you to find out why that statue's missing.
Was it not a statue? Are those actual people in the statues?
Oh, that's I like that theory. They're actually people.
I saw this one post about like how, like, if you get plaster on your fingers, it literally looks like a plaster statue. And so someone mentioned something about like, what if all those statues made out of plaster are actually just people covered in plaster? Anyway, it just reminded me of that. But
actually, before we end, I am gonna ask you, spell Zeth.
Zeath.
It is spelled Szeth.
Wait,
Zeth.
say that again.
Szeth.
Okay,
Zeth.
that's not that bad.
Yeah, it's not that bad. The S is silent.
Seth.
I'm gonna go a little bit further. He said he was from Shin. He's a Shin. I don't know if he said where he's from, but if you look at the map, you can probably pick up if he's Shin where he's from.
He's from Shin Megami Tensei.
Yes, he's from Shin Megami Tensei 5.
Shinovar.
Yes, Shinovar. All the way there in the west, and he killed the king of Alethkar.
Ah. He's like a mercenary, is he? Seems like one.
He said he's sworn to do what his masters tell him. And that he's truthless.
And they have like all these sacred personal values. Yes. So he's like, he's a Mandalorian, but instead of like killing people, instead of bringing people in, he's just an assassin.
Yeah. He mentions that stone is sacred to them, that you're not supposed to walk on it. That using stormlight for light is bad. And it's heretical or whatever. And he also says that killing is a sin. But because of his current status, the only life he's not allowed to take is his own. And as of where we stopped, we have not yet met any of the main characters of this book. But we're getting close. All right. Do you have any social media that you
wait.
What's up?
What's up? Oh, that just kind of spoiled something for me.
Oh yeah? What's that?
It's that fight that happens way later. I thought this guy was on one side, but he's on the other side.
Is that so?
Yeah.
Well,
you're bad at lying.
What I will say is that you still know very little.
I know, but you're bad at lying.
The hard part about being really into this stuff is that I was like, nobody's gonna read these books. They're way too long. So I could talk to people about them. And then I was like, but what if I did this podcast? And now I've said something to everybody. So it's impossible to find somebody that doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
But you knew the least. And you're good with theories. And I thought
I am good with theories. I've had several of my Kingdom Hearts theories proven when no one believed me.
I'm excited to see what you get from this. But for now, Mango, do you have any social media you want to promote? You want to point people to?
I mean, the only social media I really am on as myself is Twitch. I stream on Twitch at Mango Asteroid. So if I, for some reason, am actually live for once, you could check me out there.
You guys should do that. I'm on Twitter at Shawn_AFK. Everything that I do is in my Twitter bio.
He's not a streamer, even though he streams more than I do.
Not a streamer. I am on other people's streams. There's a difference.
You're part of Theta Guild. You're a streamer.
Yes. Well, Devin is our boss. Legally, he is our boss because we hit affiliate. So we had to do that for tax purposes.
Right.
But Fuck, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, this show does not have social media yet. I'm probably gonna make that now that we've actually recorded an episode and stuff. But I will hit people with social media next time. But for now, I'll leave you with this, Mango. Next time we're going to see a big battle, and then things are gonna get really sad.
Cool.
But we will see you guys next time.
See ya.